It's not just radio, it's Rockland World Radio. RocklandWorldRadio.com.
Welcome to Sober University, your next step to successful recovery, with Cheryl Adler, who says if you are going to crave anything, crave living life to the fullest. Maximize all you have and squander nothing. This program provides information to help you get your physical, mental, and spiritual house in order. And now, the host of Sober University, Cheryl Adler.
Good evening, Rockland World Radio listeners. In honor and memory of Whitney Houston, this show will delve into relapse prevention, which I believe is an essential and ongoing conversation. Tonight we are very lucky to have an encore visit with Carmine Thompson, National Interventionist from Intervention Allies. Carmine can be reached at interventionallies.com and at 1-800-980-3927. Please join us in our chat room at rocklandworldradio.com or call us directly at 845-353-2910. We welcome all your questions and your comments. Carmine, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Cheryl. Good evening to you and to the Rockland World Radio listeners.
Thank you, Carmine. How you doing out there?
Great. Very well, thank you.
I really would like to spend this next half hour, which goes by so quickly, to explore the complex issues of relapse and relapse prevention. And I'm wondering if we could first maybe begin with defining what exactly is a relapse, and when should people start looking for their symptoms of relapse?
Well, I mean, I guess primarily it would have to do with whatever one's drug of choice is. And of course, look, I mean, that's a very open-ended question. If somebody is clean and sober and they relapse on a mind-altering drug, that's, obviously, a cause for concern. So relapses, for those of us in recovery who are working a program of sobriety and are clean and sober, I mean, although my drug of choice is cocaine, if I were to have a drink or smoke marijuana, I have totally, that's a relapse. I've opened the door to a real dangerous, slippery road.
Absolutely, and I think we want to emphasize that to our listeners, that a drug is a drug is a drug, whether it's a substance or a behavior. And just because it's not the one that you started out being addicted to, you can easily rationalize your other behavior and say, well, it's not really a problem for me.
That is very correct. People oftentimes, may get clean and sober from chemical substance abuse and then find that they're having other areas, behavioral issues such as, gambling, overeating, whatever the case may be.
Absolutely. I recall somebody who had quit drinking, and they had come back from a 12-step meeting, and they told me they were quite high on weed. And I said, well, that's still a drug. And that led to a very interesting debate. But in my view, they had still relapsed, and they were still using that as a mind-altering substance.
Yeah, in fact, as I said, my drug of choice was cocaine. However, I did a lot of what we call marijuana maintenance over the years.
Okay.
And after 3 years in sobriety, I did relapse on marijuana. And I think the real dangerous thing is, and a lot of people may minimize marijuana use. For me, once I broke clarity, I was more susceptible now to justifying doing other things like picking up a drink, and ultimately it did lead right back to going back to cocaine, drinking, smoking pot, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, it's a pretty complex combination of substances, behaviors, and thought processes, defense mechanisms, rationalizing what you're doing, defending it, denying it, minimizing it. So it's a complex subject, don't you think?
Well, yeah, and I also, because once I did relapse on the marijuana, it was also I'm back to engaging with people who if they're smoking pot, 9 times out of 10, there's a lot of them doing other things as well. So I've put myself right back into those environments that are, again, dangerous for, an addict.
So we're talking about avoiding persons, places, and things, very 12-step oriented mindset.
Yeah, correct. So, I mean, it's a real slippery slope once you start down it.
Right.
You've opened yourself up to a lot of different problems or potential problems.
Absolutely. Would you be able to talk with me about the distinction between abstinence and sobriety?
Well, I mean, that's a semantical question, I think, and it's, to me, it may be similar to saying, sometimes I get calls from families where they have a loved one who's able to stop, and the question then remains, but are they able to stay stopped? We talk about when somebody has stopped and they're not working a program of recovery that they are basically white-knuckling it or, they're on the wagon. It's just a matter of time if they're not working recovery tools and making lifestyle changes and behavioral changes that, chances of them staying stopped is probably not very good.
Yeah, I would like to add that I think that sobriety involves much more of an awareness in a mindfulness, whereas abstinence is really just breaking down the behavior. It's saying, okay, I'll put down the beer, I'll put down the weed, I'll stop having sex with the wrong people, I'll stop debting and spending and gambling. But if the mindset and the quality of one's lifestyle and one's thoughts and ethics don't change along with the behavior, I don't think that the abstinence can get you very far.
I think that's, spot on. And in fact, abstinence being self-restraint, if I have to go through life just restraining myself continuously from picking up a drink or drug, that's a hard place to be in. Fortunately, I think with sobriety there comes a sense of freedom from addiction, and that's where I'm at today. And I love the fact that I do have this newfound freedom as opposed to this restraining of myself.
It's a very important distinction, and congratulations, kudos to you.
Well, yeah, and, again, it is semantical for a lot of people, but, I mean, sobriety for those of us in recovery encompasses so much more than just putting down, drinking and using, or it is about a behavioral change. It is about lifestyle changes, working on areas of our personality, character defects that, we want to improve upon.
Yeah, I think it really is about working the step in regard to your personal inventory.
Yeah, absolutely. And
becoming quite conscious of yourself.
Yeah, and also, for me, it's also, I'm a realist, which I guess makes me an optimist, because as a realist, I see that there is, successful recovery out there.
Absolutely, sure.
And also as a realist, I realize that I don't want to be a casualty of the drug of drug addiction. I've seen enough of that. So there's hope, and there is an actual opportunity to work on those areas of oneself, the underlying issues, so to speak, that we refer to. Because more times than not, there are things that addicts are driven by. For whatever it is. I mean, maybe we're more sensitive than others to a lot of things around us. So we take things to heart differently, and our escape from having to deal with the pressures of reality was, to escape via drugs and alcohol.
Absolutely. I think when people are in pain or they've suffered trauma, it does make one even more sensitive. You can be born with a sensitive nature just to start with. And I would encourage people to connect with their tender souls and not drown themselves in a drug that could hurt them, but to bring to life your tender soul.
Well, and the thing too for addicts, and this is not exclusive to us. I mean,
of course.
And that's something that I think is real important for people to understand, that there are other people who go through this as well. I mean, we all are experiencing the same human experience in that there is a gamut of emotions and feelings that go on. But our way of escaping having to deal with it has been via, checking out through chemical abuse or substances.
Or behaviors.
And through behaviors, through, destructive behavior. You're absolutely right. So,
Carmine, when you talk with people about relapse, do you also address triggers and decision chains?
And sure, and that's really important because, as we know, the changing of people, places, and things that was, we mentioned earlier is really important. It's a real, for people in early recovery, I mean, there's a lot of things that have to be looked at if they want to, get on a successful path.
What are some of those things that you would ask people to take a closer look at?
Well, typically I bring people into recovery programs. I mean, that's what I do as an interventionist. I'm giving them a professional level of care to help them get clean and sober. Once they start getting a little bit of sobriety and clarity, a lot of times people start feeling, after a couple of weeks, a month, like, I've got this thing down now. I know what I got it addressed, and I know what to do now. But sobriety takes time, so I'm more apt to, consider, doing step-down phases in people's recovery. So you've gone through a treatment program. I know you probably want to just get out and go back home and get right back into the groove, but that's probably not the wisest thing to do. Let's take this thing.
I think that's dangerous.
It's very dangerous. So let's think about incremental doing this, from treatment program, maybe into structured sober living with an intensive outpatient component to it. And of course, I think one of the most important things is that when people are leaving a structured treatment program where they've been given this opportunity to get their life back on track and start getting some balance in their life, is to then follow through with going to a 12-step program immediately upon leaving that treatment program that they were in, because that's where a lot of people seem to fail.
I also would strongly encourage people to go to 12-step psychotherapy. I am a huge fan and a huge believer in 12-step philosophy, but I can also honestly say that I don't consider it treatment. I consider it a great support with wonderful opportunities to talk with your peers, but I don't think anything quite replaces the deeper work of 12-step psychotherapy.
I totally agree with that. I do think that there is...
I'm glad we agree on that.
No, I mean, look, there are people who do need other assistance, and sometimes the 12-step program is not enough, but it is a real important component, as the psychotherapy portion of this. I mean, there's a lot of people who really do have deep-seated depression. They are dealing with trauma, past trauma, and these events in their life that really do need to be addressed. So uncovering, discovering those things is really important, and working with a qualified therapist to help them do that, I think, is hugely beneficial.
Yes, and I would like to expand that thought by saying that without the deeper exploration, I would call that a betrayal of oneself. Doing things in life that may be rewarding one's fame or fortune, if you're somebody like Whitney Houston, but looking more deeply into her life, was she not suffering from something other celebrities also suffered from, the immense and intense pressures of fame, fortune, and celebrity? And while the majority of us may not reach such status in life, each of us is challenged with our own emotions, fears, pains, and losses. I don't know if you had caught the interview that Whitney had done with Diane Sawyer, but she was asked a question very directly about her drug use, and she admitted to Diane Sawyer that she was grappling with her own inner demons. And from my perspective, the way to do that effectively is to be in a very deep process of self-discovery, to really commit yourself and find a compassionate therapist who knows exactly what 12-step work is. Would you not agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, people really do need to take advantage of, whatever tools are out there. And psychotherapy is a real important part of a lot of people's recovery. we are lay people in the 12-step programs. There are
Exactly.
things, and there are things that I think, your sponsor, when you get a sponsor, can only help you with so much. I mean, somebody who's, trained in other areas can really delve into things with you so that you can get, address them. So, yeah, I think this is a real important piece of people's recovery. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, because I think although we really encourage people to be in the rooms, as we call the 12-step meetings, people have to be able to live outside the rooms. And I like to think of that as really, how does somebody tap into their own worth, their own self-confidence, their own creativity, their own gifts in life, and live a truly authentic life rather than just be abstinent, which is just put the substance down but not really develop any more deeply. It's kind of like having a piece of clay in front of you and not being able to sculpt it, or a canvas and not being able to paint it, if you know what I mean.
Well, I do think it does begin with that, that initial step into, abstinence and getting sober. And then it's about, peeling back the layers of the onion, so to speak.
Right.
And it is a process. And I think one of the things that, for myself especially, it was really about being patient with myself. Because, in the way I operate, I want everything yesterday.
Tell us more about the urgency of that.
Yeah, and that's,
I think that's so real for so many people. It's like now is not quick enough.
No, and, and then that need for things to be perfect. And, the program actually addresses that, that it's a program of progress and not perfection.
There is no such thing as perfection. I think that would define insanity, too.
Exactly. And one of the things that I've actually come to view differently is that I actually embrace my quirkiness and my character defects. I mean, I know they're there. I mean, I'm still, have to force myself from giving people the finger when I'm driving. I mean, it happens. And then I do it, and it's like, okay, I'm going to have to do better next time. But I drive in L.A., and anybody who's driven out here knows that, it happens. Do I go into road rage? Absolutely not. But do I get,
irritated?
Irritated, agitated. Do those things still happen to me? Yes. And I don't have to throw in the towel if I'm not perfect today. Where before it was always like, either you're doing the extremist thought. It's all or nothing kind of attitude. I think that's part of what sobriety is, learning about moderation in your life.
The many colors of the rainbow.
Sure, and embracing it too. And I was speaking at a meeting one day, and I kind of, for me, it's real important that I do have things to work on. It gives me something and I'm always going to have something to work on. I mean, I'm 47 years old, and I'm sure when I'm 70, there'll be other areas to work on.
I hope so.
Yeah, and but I'm okay with that today. I used to not be okay with that. Like, I had to get perfect and get perfect and stay that way. But that's not realistic.
But I think that really asks us the question we should really take a look at, which is that we're always going to have events in our life or feelings within us that cause anguish, agony, sadness, loss, depression, memories of difficult times. And we're not going to change that about us. Those are things that we're going to have to live with. I think it's learning how to accept those experiences and tolerate them, be able to sit with them and work with them without picking up your drug of choice. Those are part of the human condition.
That's exactly what it is, and how exactly. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better. Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that is the addict's argument, is I want it now. I don't want to feel discomfort. I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to be depressed. I just want to go merrily along. And that's not what the human condition is about. We are all given these challenges for a reason. And I think that's where the spiritual part of life comes from, is learning, why are we given these feelings? What are they about? What do they really mean to our personal growth and our wellness? It's not necessarily a matter of having the depression means that you're going to be sick forever. It means that you're given something, and now you learn a tool to manage it.
And also, for me, I mean, it's also about not sabotaging myself as I've done so often in the past. We also talk about don't leave before the miracle happens within the rooms.
Say more about that. Could you please say more about don't leave before the miracle happens?
Well, because it is a growth process. I mean, for some people, the obsession, the craving to drink and use can go on for a longer time than for others. Sometimes for others it gets lifted much sooner. But we know if you stick with this and if you continue to do what's in front of you and work the tools and put in the effort, that this too shall pass. I mean, these things can get better. And that's the realist in me that, remains optimistic, because I've seen it in my own life and I've seen it in many other people's lives. But you really sometimes just have to be patient and not leave until those things start to come to fruition for you.
That's so very true, and I want to encourage my listeners to never give up, to always hold on to hope and faith, and know that if today stinks, tomorrow could be a whole lot better. So you just don't know. You've got to just hold on. Hold on to your life raft with all you've got.
Well, yeah, but also, I'm actually, even more incremental than that, because I don't take the whole day as stinking. Maybe the morning stunk, but the afternoon doesn't have to.
That's right. And so what would you do to say, the morning stinks, but I want the afternoon to be better than the morning?
Yeah, I mean, if I wake up with a bad hair day, as we often do sometimes.
Yeah, we do, for sure.
Do something to pay it forward. Get out of yourself,
Get out of yourself. Get out of your way and get out of yourself and go do something nice for somebody else, perhaps.
Correct, and I don't have to have an entirely bad day. I could have a section of the day which may not be going great, but that doesn't mean that, I can't sit down to dinner with, friends and family and, be in the moment and have a positive experience, even if, the work day was tough.
Exactly right. One should not define the next thing.
Correct. And, again, I mean, I don't know what causes one's depression. I mean, it could be biological, it could be chemical, it could be, planetary. Sometimes, and this is one of the things I learned in recovery, was that I seem to cycle. As I'm going through this circle, there's some periods within that circle where I just have, moments where I'm just not up to par.
Exactly.
And the longer I've stayed sober, the more I've realized that, I really, first of all, those periods have diminished in, the time and in the intensity of them, because I know what it is. I've recognized it. Okay, so this is that feeling. Do I have to act on this? Not at all. And one of the things, too, is by exercising, I mean, I've learned that, I just go through the motions. I don't necessarily listen to my brain. If I know I need to go to the gym, if I'm going to have a good workout or not, I really don't know. It's really up to how my body's going to respond that day.
You do it anyway.
You just go there and you do it, and you just do. And if you can only do a little bit, at least I've made a small deposit into the fitness account as opposed to no deposit at all.
Exactly right. Exactly. Carmine, what would you say are some of the key elements for encouraging somebody who says to you, I just can't do this work anymore. It's not worth it to me. I just want to go back to my old habits. What do you say to them?
Well, I almost felt like saying, if you can't do it anymore, you can't do it any less either. But look, I'm real big on just just do what's in front of you. Take the next 5 minutes. I mean, you don't have to, again, bite off everything in its entirety. It's piecemeal. We do this one step at a time, or incrementally. That's the only way to do it. And again, when it comes to things like depression, when I go through my depression mood, I know that this is probably the time where I'm just going to have to do what's in front of me. I may not do it with the same gusto that I did the day before, but I still need to get up and make my bed, take my shower, brush my teeth, whether I want to or not. I just do it. I walk through it.
It's a humble life.
Exactly. It's just to continue to create that structure, that routine.
It can be very comforting.
Absolutely.
Very assuring to be able to do those simple tasks every day and have them have meaning for you.
Well, and the thing is, too, because I've worked in recovery programs, and I know that, people swing a lot in early recovery, especially,
Absolutely.
Your detox and withdrawing, 1 minute you want to leave the program, if we can just calm somebody down and de-escalate them a bit and say, just take it for the next 5 minutes. That's all you have to do.
And breathe.
It's amazing how in 5 minutes later, somebody who was ready to leave the program is now sitting down talking to the other, residents or patients, and they're in a whole different headspace. So you don't have to buy into that feeling of, wanting to, defeat yourself or sabotage yourself and just throw it all in. You can say, okay, I know what this is. This is my lower self wanting to, sabotage everything in one fell swoop. Do I have to buy into that? No. Can I just, maybe sit tight for the next 5 minutes, just do a little bit in front of me, get up, go for a walk, do something different,
Move a muscle, change a thought.
Correct. Exactly.
That's one of the best things. I had a clinical supervisor many years ago who would tell all of us in supervision, just tell your clients to eat a tuna fish sandwich and take a walk around the block. And it's really true.
Yeah, it changes the brain waves.
It does. It changes the brain waves. And we just want to help people connect to the best parts of themselves. That's what this is all about. Giving hope, teaching people patience and the value of process and self-awareness.
And here's one other thing that, I think
Sure.
is very helpful. Forget getting rid of your bad habits. Just start incorporating some better habits. Put a couple good ones in. For me, it's so routine to wake up and start making my bed.
Yeah.
And because of doing that habit every day, there are areas that, the bad habits just start to fall away, So I was always under the impression that if I just kept adding good habits, the bad ones just don't seem to have room in there anymore.
That's exactly right. The good habits become more dominant and the negative habits kind of fade out.
You always follow up what I say with putting it a little bit better than I put it. I love that.
It's reflective listening. That's all it is.
Very good.
My pleasure. Carmine, we're going to have to wrap up the show, and I've loved having you on yet again. I hope you'll come back. Before we close, are there any last thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners tonight?
Look, on the heels of the Whitney Houston death, I guess it's really important, and this is more so for families, that when your loved one is in recovery and they're clean and sober, that's really the time to get more involved in their life and to start thinking about things that, let's address the potential for relapse at that point. Let's not wait until it happens. Talk about what that would look like if it does happen. What should we do? What should we put in place to kind of do, damage control and reduce collateral damage from happening? My thing as an interventionist has always been to address a problem before it becomes a crisis.
That's exactly right. And I'd like to add to your thought that there were people in Whitney's life who saw her enjoying champagne shortly before she did end up overdosing. And those people made light of her choice to drink. They didn't make the connection as we started out, coming full circle to the beginning of our conversation. They didn't understand that that was a relapse, that because she wasn't using cocaine, she was still drinking, she was still using a drug. And so right there in front of everybody who was normalizing her pathology, she was relapsing.
Well, this is true. So
that's when we have friends and family who must take the stand, who must face the addict and say, no, this is not what you should be doing right now. This could really hurt you. I think we all have an ethical obligation to do that.
Yeah, and it really involves families understanding too that there's a need to truly understand what recovery is, sounds, and looks like.
Yes.
People are oftentimes very familiar with the addiction because it's staring them in the face, and the behavior is, so disruptive that they get to see the addiction side of it. But the recovery side of it, that's where the real, work goes on and the real good stuff is happening. I just would love families to become more involved in recovery. And I'm talking about going to an open meeting of, any 12-step program. Go to the open meetings, see what addicts and alcoholics are talking about in recovery so that you have the language yourself to speak to your own loved one about.
And you know what to look for. You really want to be able to recognize, just as a parent who has a child with a fever, or, they come down with a rash and they find out that they have measles or something, that because they didn't get vaccinated or whatever, they recognize that their child is not well, and they do the right thing. They take the child to the emergency room or the doctor, but they don't ignore it. And I think that family and friends should be able to recognize signs and symptoms in addicts and bravely take the ethical stand and do the right and loving thing.
No, you're right. And when you use that example of a child having a fever, once a parent learns about how to help them heal, they're very involved in the healing part of it.
That's right. That's right, because they don't want their child to be sick. And we don't want our friends, our family, our loved ones to suffer from addiction.
Correct. And sobriety, recovery, that is the healing process. Learn more about the healing process.
Exactly. And we're going to close on that note, to learn more about the healing process of recovery. Carmine, it has been wonderful talking with you tonight. Thank you again so much. It's a privilege.
Well, thank you as well, Cheryl, and to all the Rockland World listeners.
And we are in Rockland and in the world on the Internet. And I'd like to repeat your contact information because Carmine is a world-class interventionist. And I encourage any of you who have concerns and questions about how to have a very successful recovery. Carmine, please just remind us of your high success rate.
It's 97 to 98%, actually. It's
pretty damn good there.
Not bad.
not a bad record. So
not bad for a kid from Jersey.
Not bad for a kid from Jersey.
Exactly.
So Carmine's contact information is Carmine Thompson at interventionallies.com. And you can call him at 1-800-980-3927. I want to thank my listeners for being here with me tonight. Remember, you can reach me here at my home away from home. I love saying that. rocklandworldradio.com. My personal website, please go visit me, soberuniversity.com, and my professional office number, 845-358-4652. That's all the time we have for now. Join me next week when Glenn Keane from Spotlight on Success will come and join our show and talk to us and share secrets about living a life of success and how this can enrich your own sober lifestyle. Remember, if you're going to crave anything, crave living life to the fullest. Maximize all you have and squander nothing. Thank you. Good night.
It's not just radio, it's Rockland World Radio. RocklandWorldRadio.com.